Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello, it's great to be back. We're hoping for a third round next year, so give us good grades
Yeah,
today, right?
give us good grades. We'll keep going. This is fantastic to sit here and look out over this room. Isn't this a great facility? Let's give a huge round of applause for the people hosting us today. And where did Jordan go? There you are. Thank you for doing this. Great job. Appreciate it. Well, one thing we have in common is we all understand the thread of technology and how it winds through each of our businesses, and that's one thing we all have in common. Whether you're in the private sector, the public sector, nonprofits, technology is here and it's affecting all of us. And that's certainly true at Northwestern Mutual. We're in the midst of transforming our client experience today. We're moving from sort of a human-led experience for our clients to one that weaves together both technology and a digital and a human advisor. And that notion of transforming the client experience is completely dependent on technology. Every aspect of this transformation that we're going through as it relates to how we engage with our clients ties together with technology. In fact, if you saw today's paper, there was a nice article about how the planning experience, which is at the forefront of that customer engagement, is there and is what is driving us. You can see on the slides how we're bringing this all together. Online tools, detailed planning that's always running in the background, always guiding you where you need to go, and then everything on your mobile device so you know exactly where you are, where you need to be, where you're going, and how to get there. It's all tied to technology. And as I think about that from Northwestern Mutual's perspective, I'm just amazed at the shift in our company really in the last 4 or 5 years. You know, we still have actuaries, investment professionals, accountants, lawyers, all those things that you'd think of at a traditional life insurance company. But now, over half the jobs at the company touch technology. More than 3,000 of our 6,000 and so odd jobs here in Southeast Wisconsin are technology-oriented jobs. And when I look at our open positions at the company, more than half of them tied to digital, technology, and things like that. So this transformation is happening, and it's happening fast. Nick?
You know, a year ago, John and I began this discussion about the fact that we're in different businesses, but so many similarities. So the messages you just heard from John, you're going to hear from me. Our workforce is changing dramatically. Our customers, our patients have very different expectations than they did 5 years ago or even 2 years ago. And the data is very clear on that. We haven't made healthcare simple yet, and the way that we're going to get there is to use technology effectively and to make it easy for our patients every single day when they access us. So we're on that journey to transform right now. We are very interested in ways to make access easier, make technology a useful tool for our patients. Video visits, it's taking up a little slowly maybe in Wisconsin compared to what we're seeing in California, but we know it's coming. So we're seeing an increase in that. E-visits via email, electronic scheduling, urgent care visits. There are all kinds of things we can do now that we couldn't do a couple of years ago, and our patients are telling us over and over, you're doing the right things. But it's very clear that our workforce today is not going to be our workforce for tomorrow. I can't quantify our tech jobs exactly the same way as you can, and here's the reason. We have primarily clinicians working for us, doctors, nurses, pharmacists. They're all tech jobs now. They just not, I don't know it yet, but we're getting them there. We're retraining a whole generation of people to be tech savvy, even though they weren't before. So I want you to think a little bit about what's going to happen in the next several years with jobs in healthcare alone. Artificial intelligence. We're just starting to use that in areas like cancer to help us augment our diagnostic skills. Depends on technology support to do it well. We're using 3D printers in healthcare now. Wouldn't have even been heard of a few years ago. If we don't have the right tech support for all these emerging jobs, we're not going to do the job we need to do to improve patient care. So exciting time, but heavily dependent on having the right kind of workforce. John?
So As we as a company started to think about this, it was obvious that we could have tried to go down this path alone. Aurora could have done the same thing. How do you create sort of a standalone strategy to attract the right kind of talent to your particular company or business or organization or whatever it is? But the more we looked into it, the more I became convinced that doing it on sort of a standalone one-off basis just wouldn't allow us to attract both the depth of talent we need and the sort of breadth of talent we needed. We just couldn't do it on a standalone basis. And when we look at other cities and how they're doing it, it's clear that the cities that are ahead in this game, that are at the forefront of what we're talking about, aren't doing it in silos. They're doing it as a single community. They're working not as individual companies, but as a brand in their area to attract workers, to attract talent, and to build their tech community. So we have to do that. This is an ecosystem. People don't anymore think about just the company they're going to work for. They think about the entire ecosystem in the community that they're involved in. Now so that means we have to engage across the community, not just in our individual organizations, but across. And we've started to do that through the MMAC, the GMC, the M7, and many others. We're putting together this collective effort to transform Milwaukee itself into a tech hub, and that's what this is all about today. And there's people in this room from all different organizations, backgrounds, passions, et cetera, that have spent the last year working on this Tech Hub Summit. And how do we take this idea about a community-wide effort to make Milwaukee a tech hub to actually translate it into something that's real and that's going on? And we've looked at what are we doing and how do we benchmark that against other cities that are clearly ahead of us and clearly successful at what we're wanting to do. And when we look at what we're doing and what these other cities are doing, it really comes down to three key pillars that we need to focus on from a community perspective. The first is innovation. We have to increase the velocity and the volume of innovation that's going on in Milwaukee. The second is talent. We have to grow our talent pool. The type of backgrounds, the types of skills, across all different spectrums of age, gender, and things like that, the diversity and the amount of talent has to go up in the city. And lastly, and maybe most importantly at this phase and sort of where we are, is that we have to tell our story. We have to talk about what Milwaukee is. We can't talk about where we were anymore. We have to talk about where we're going.
So let me dive in a little bit on these three pillars, because we have to be very intentional about how we're going to move Milwaukee from where we've been to where we want to be, starting with innovation. John talked about volume and velocity. Those two things together allow innovation to build on itself. So you'll see a number of things that we're doing as companies, others are doing as well. First of all, sponsoring events. Look at the number of people in the room today. This is really growing. There's a lot of excitement with it. And by getting people together, we connect different parts of the tech community to get some momentum going. Investing in local startups. This has been a really important thing for us at Advocate Aurora Health. It has been good for our patients. It's been good for the companies we invest in. As an organization, we take care of about 3 million patients. And if we choose wisely to invest in startups, they do well and our patients benefit from it. So investment into local startups is very important. And then if you think about some of the larger things that you've seen announced in the last year, like our Wisconsin Valley Venture Fund, where Northwestern Mutual, Johnson Controls, Foxconn, Advocate Aurora have gone together and created a $100 million fund to say, there are threads that cross all of these industries. We're going to come together, we're going to invest, and then we're going to build on this. That's the kind of thing we need in this community to make innovation really grow quickly. And then co-working spaces, which I think you've done, John, with the Cream City Labs. We got to get people together in the same space so they work well together, spaces like this. Second pillar is talent. This one is hugely important to every single industry. I'll talk about a little bit from healthcare. We're heavily focused not only on talent development, but on diversity and inclusion as we recruit that talent. We need to reflect the communities we serve, and we need to bring new and different ideas into our organization every single day. So that whole concept of developing talent within the organization, incredibly important. Doing it community-wide, even more important. Partnerships. This is where higher education comes in. Very important that we engage our universities. So Marquette, UWM, MSOE, and then what we're doing with K-12 STEM education. Those pipelines become vital if we're going to not only change the way we educate people, but retain those people so it's not the low percents you heard about from Jordan. And then I think growing interest in tech careers. And this is where we all have a job. I will tell you, if I go back 2 years, I was not talking about tech talent as much as I should have been. Now I'm talking about it every day. And if we're all out there talking about it every day, we'll get some momentum going. And that leads us to the final thing, which is identity. This is about creating a new dialogue and a new story about Milwaukee and what we want to be in the future, how we're going to create that. We have $240 million of investment right now in tech over the last 18 months. That's a lot of money. It's not enough to get to where we need to go, but it's a good start. You're seeing activity now that hasn't been seen before. We've got to go out and talk about that. And I'm a firm believer that the future hasn't been written in this area for Milwaukee. We're responsible for writing that future, all of us here in this room.
So we're off to a really good start. I was telling a few of you before the show started today that when we kicked this off last year, I didn't know where we'd be a year later, but I have to tell you where we are has exceeded my expectations. The amount of money that we've invested, the amount of things that have gotten started just since November of 2017, I think is actually quite extraordinary. And I feel like the momentum continues to build. And I just want to go through several of these wins to put some highlights on them. We've seen clear success with G Beta, which was one of the first announcements we made right after last year. This program finds very early stage entrepreneurs that have the right skills, the right potential, the right ideas, and provides them with coaching, mentorship, introduces them to a network of other entrepreneurs, business professionals, tech professionals, gives them office space, all in a way to create whatever catalyst they need in order to take their businesses, their ideas, their applications to a whole new level. The 2018 spring and summer cohorts are complete. We've got more to come. Northwestern Mutual, Baird, Kohl's, Rockwell, the MKE Institute have all come together to make this work, and I'm just really thrilled at the collective impact that it's already had and we see it going. And I also want to highlight something Nick talked about, which is the strong and what I would say growing collaboration between the private sector and the academic world. There's several places going on right now where we've seen local colleges and universities, higher education start to do things differently. Probably the most obvious example from my perspective is the Northwestern Mutual Data Institute, where we've teamed up with Marquette and University to create space on our campus to have more sort of knowledge transfer between the academic side and the practical clinical use of that information to really move forward where we're going. But that's just one example. What MSOE is doing with their artificial intelligence program and Computational Science Hall has put Milwaukee on the map in many ways. And there's other partnerships to note, like the UWM Rockwell Connected Systems Institute. So again, more and more collaboration, which is what this whole Tech Summit's all about. Something called IC STARS has shown clear success right off the bat. This is a tech training program that take people from underrepresented communities in the Milwaukee area and provide them with opportunities to flourish in these new tech careers. It started with a huge commitment from the Doman Foundation, but multiple local companies have stepped up to provide sponsorship and membership, so that's growing. And I would note that we've only just started. All of this stuff is only a year old, and already there's more and more talk between organizations, Nick and me, other people, companies getting together and talk about where we're going, not just in an informal way trading ideas, but in a formal way to move this whole ball forward. And I can assure you that the more I talk to people, the more I know that we're on the right track, because the enthusiasm, but not just the enthusiasm, but the actual work, commitment, and hours invested is growing at an exponential rate.
Great. So where do we go from here? You know, I'm firmly of the belief that the answers are right here in this room. If we don't all own this and do it, it won't happen. And if we do take it on, it's going to happen. We have a lot of enthusiasm. John and I are committed to building on that, to getting other companies pulled in. We think that's the responsibility of good organizations to invest back in the community around tech. But we have a few things that we think are important to get us there. Unified vision, that's evolving and developing, but we're going to create it here together. Secondly, we're asking people to really get involved. And there are a lot of ways to do that. Support the STEM efforts that are going on. Mentoring. Don't underestimate the power of mentoring. Every one of us in this room can mentor someone in this area and nudge them along. And if you have a passion yourself in an area, then grab onto it, lead it, and nurture it. That's how we're going to get things done. And finally, I think this concept of looking beyond your own industry and looking for connections and webs and partnerships, I've learned a lot in the last few years about the power of partnerships. No single organization does well all by itself. That's why we've come together on this. That's why we're all here today. And for all of you way back at the back there, we appreciate your enthusiasm, and I think it's just great that we filled up this whole room.
It's awesome.
Super. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.